"If you don't share the winnings, get out," my father screamed when I won $3 million. My replied, "Funny, you only love me when I'm useful." My name is Lucas, and I've spent my entire life following in the footsteps of my brother Brandon. It is not something I like to confess, but it is the reality. My parents, Susan and Thomas, have always had a favorite, and it's never been me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not searching for sympathy. I simply want to tell you my experience because something occurred to me recently that changed everything, and I need to get it off my chest. I was raised in a modest house in a quiet area. We were a middle-class family with a roof over our heads and food on the table, but there was always a noticeable gap between how my parents handled Brandon and me. Brandon was the golden child from an early age, receiving constant adulation. If he received a good grade, my mother would display his report card on the fridge like it was a work of art. If I received an equal or higher grade, I'd only get a "well done" and a change of topic. If Brandon wanted a new toy, my parents would go out of their way to get him one. If I asked for something, they said it wasn't in the budget, or that I needed to work for it. It wasn't only about material possessions. Brandon was clearly preferred in all aspects. When it came time to think about college, my parents didn't hesitate to pay for Brandon's tuition at a top private university in the country. "It's an investment in his future," my father Thomas would add, as my mother Susan nodded proudly. Brandon wanted to pursue business administration, and my parents regarded him as the family's next successful entrepreneur. In contrast, I was forced to fend for myself. I wanted to pursue engineering, but when I asked for assistance, they looked at me like I had asked for the moon. "We can't afford it, Lucas. You have to look for a scholarship," my mother told me in a tone that left no room for disagreement. So I worked. During the day, I served tables at a restaurant, and at night, I worked hard to maintain my grades and avoid losing my partial scholarship. Nonetheless, it wasn't enough. I ended up taking out school loans, leaving me with debt that still weighs heavily on me years later. Meanwhile, Brandon led a leisurely existence, with his expenditures paid and plenty of time to hang out with friends or go on vacation. I had scarcely any time to sleep. I don't want to come across as ungrateful, but it's difficult not to feel a knot in your gut when your own parents treat you as if you're less. I tried to talk to them several times, wondering why there was such a discrepancy. "It's not that we love you less, Lucas," my mother would say. "It's just that Brandon needs more support. You're strong. You can handle it on your own." However, rather than soothing me, their statements made me feel even more alone. Why did I have to be the strongest one? Why couldn't I have the same love and support? Despite everything, I continued forward. I finished from engineering school with outstanding honors, but with a debt that would hound me for years. I landed a decent job as a junior engineer at a construction business, but my wage was barely enough to support my loan payments, the rent my parents charged me for living at home, and my basic needs. Yes, I was still living with them, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't afford my own apartment. My parents charged me rent for living at home, which Brandon never had to pay. "You're working, Lucas. It's only fair that you contribute," they'd tell him. Meanwhile, Brandon, who had already graduated, was still living at home without paying anything. Brandon eventually decided to establish his own business. He wanted to start an urban clothes store that was modern and stylish, he said. My parents showed him unwavering support. They took out all of their savings, which they said didn't exist when I begged for assistance with education, and gave them to Brandon to rent a location, purchase items, and hire employees. "It's a great opportunity for him," my father would say. "Brandon has vision. He's going to go far." I observed them silently, wondering how people could be so blind. Brandon had no background, no good business plan, and his idea appeared to be a whim rather than a real undertaking. A year before, I attempted to start a business. I had a concept for a small engineering consulting firm that may expand over time. To get started, I asked my parents for a small loan equal to what they spend on Brandon's outings in a month. Their response was a stern no. "We don't see a future in it, Lucas," my mother informed me. "That sounds too risky. You're better off sticking with your job." It hurt. Not only did they refuse, but they also didn't bother listening to my suggestion. They didn't think my dreams were worthwhile. Meanwhile, I indulged in a questionable habit. I purchased lottery tickets. It began as a stupid idea, a way to imagine something better. Every week I'd spend a few bucks on a ticket, hoping that, just maybe, luck might smile upon me. It was my small retreat, my way of holding on to the dream that one day I'd be able to climb out of the hole I was in. My dad and Brandon made fun of me for it. "You're throwing your money away, Lucas," Brandon would say with a smile. "The lottery is for losers." I did not answer. Instead, I put my tickets in a drawer and went about my business. Months passed and Brandon's business began to struggle. I was not surprised. I'd seen how he managed things, spending more than he made, hiring pals who knew nothing about business, and making rash decisions. My parents, who had invested everything in him, were concerned as the debts accumulated. Meanwhile, I continued to work, paying off my education debt and the house rent, with no one asking how I was or if I needed anything. Until one day, everything changed. It was Friday night. As normal, I went to the corner store and bought a lottery ticket. I didn't have high hopes, but I enjoyed checking the figures, hoping that, for once, life might give me a chance. That night, sitting in my room, I switched on the television to watch the live drawing. The numbers began to come out one by one, and something inside me halted. 7, 14, 23, 42. The same numbers as on my ticket. At first I assumed I was dreaming. I repeatedly checked the ticket, carefully comparing each number. There were no mistakes. I'd won $3 million. I did not yell. I did not jump. I did not accomplish anything. I just sat on my bed, staring at the ticket, experiencing a combination of amazement and happiness. For the first time in my life, I felt in control. But I also realized I couldn't tell anyone. Not yet. My parents and Brandon were untrustworthy, so I didn't want them to find out until the money was safely in my account. The following day I went to the lottery office to validate my ticket. It was all real. The employees congratulated me. They informed me that the payment would take between 15 and 30 days to reach my bank account and handed me one of those massive symbolic checks used for pictures. It was massive, with my name and the sum of $3 million written in big characters. We had a photo session. I smiled for the cameras and returned home with the check in my arm, still comprehending what had happened. When I arrived home, my parents and Brandon were in the living room. When they saw me holding the huge check, their eyes opened like saucers. "What is that, Lucas?" my mother inquired, with a mix of interest and distrust. I waited a second before responding, knowing that what I said would change everything. "I won the lottery," I explained, trying to remain cool. $3 million. The hush that ensued was deafening. Then Brandon gave a hesitant laugh. "You? Seriously, Lucas?" My parents did not laugh. They looked at me as if I had just admitted a crime. "It's true," I replied, holding out the symbolic check. Then all hell broke loose. My mother was the first to speak. "Lucas, this is a blessing for the family. You have to share it with us. Brandon needs that money. His business is in trouble. He has debts to pay. If you give him half, he can save it and get ahead." I looked at her incredulously. Half? After everything they had done, or did not do, for me. Brandon nodded as if it were the most sensible thing in the world. "Yeah, Lucas, it's only fair. We're family. You can't keep all that for yourself." I felt a giggle rise in my throat, but I held it in. "Fair?" I asked, gazing at the three of them. "Since when do you care about what's fair? You never supported me in anything. You didn't pay for my college. You let me go into debt up to my neck. You didn't give me a cent for my business idea. But you gave Brandon everything he asked for. And now that I win something on my own, you want half? Number, I'm not giving you anything." The atmosphere became tense. My father, who had been quiet until now, took a step forward. "Lucas, don't be selfish. If you don't give half to your brother, you're getting out of this house. We don't want ungrateful people here." I'm not sure where I got the confidence, but I did. "Perfect," I replied. "I'm leaving. And don't worry, I don't plan on speaking to you again. You never supported me. Never believed in me. Now that I have something, suddenly I'm part of the family? No thanks." The fight that followed was a whirlwind. I threw everything at them, including how they paid for Brandon's schooling while I worked countless shifts, how they handed him all of their savings for a failing business, and how they charged me rent while Brandon lived for free. "It was always him, wasn't it?" I said to them. "It was always Brandon who was important, the one who was worth it. I was just the one who had to be strong, the one who had to manage on his own. Well, now I have. And I'm not sharing it with you." My mother tried to intervene, saying I was exaggerating and that they only wanted what was best for everyone. Brandon, for his part, said I was envious. He claimed I had always been jealous of him. I didn't respond. It was not worth it. I went up to my room, placed the symbolic check on my desk, and locked myself in to arrange my getaway. I was not going to spend another day in that house. I awoke early, determined to begin searching for a location. Before walking down to the kitchen, I saw the check was not on my desk. I headed downstairs, but as I got to the living room, I stopped dead in my tracks. My parents and Brandon sat around the dining room table, with the symbolic check in the center. It was not whole. It was demolished. The pieces of cardboard were thrown across the table, some cut into strips and others crumpled. Brandon had a pair of scissors, while my mother had a piece. My father gazed at me with a harsh expression, as if he were challenging me. I experienced a brief moment of panic. What did they do? My parents and Brandon stared at me and said, "We warned you, Lucas. Because you refused to share, we decided to rip up your check. Now you have nothing. What are you going to do without your little money?" Brandon shouted out in envy, holding the scissors like a trophy. And then, I'm not sure how, a laugh began to rise in my chest. I tried to control it, but I couldn't. I nearly passed out from laughter. My parents and Brandon looked at me as if I had gone crazy. "What are you laughing at?" my father asked, evidently agitated. "Do you think this is funny?" My laughter became louder. I couldn't stop. Tears streamed down my cheeks, and I had to lean against the wall to avoid collapsing. Brandon's expression changed from arrogance to confusion, and my parents stared at one another, as if they didn't comprehend what was going on. "Why are you laughing?" my mother yelled, dropping the piece of cardboard she was clutching. "We just destroyed your prize. Don't you get it? You're not going to collect anything." I wiped away my tears and attempted to relax, but my body was still shaking from laughter. "That check," I explained, pointing to the pieces on the table. "That check is worthless. It's a symbolic check, a piece of cardboard they gave me for the photos. The real money is being processed and will be in my account in less than 15 days. Did you really think you could ruin me by tearing up a piece of paper?" The silence that ensued was beautiful. The three of them grew pallid, as if their bodies had been emptied of blood. Brandon dropped the scissors, and my father opened his lips, but no words emerged. My mother was the first to respond, though her voice quivered. "Lucas, that was a joke. We didn't mean it. We just wanted to teach you a lesson." "A lesson?" My laughter ceased, and I felt a surge of wrath build in my breast. "A lesson?" I asked, taking a step nearer them. "What kind of lesson? That I've never been anything to you? That all that matters is Brandon and his damn business that's good for nothing? No, Mom. This wasn't a joke. This was pure venom. Pure spite. But you know what? I don't care. I'm leaving this house, and I'm not looking back." Brandon sprang up from his chair with a panicked and desperate attitude. "Lucas, wait, don't take it like that. We're family. You know my business is in trouble. If you give me some of that money, I can save it. Don't be selfish, man." "Selfish?" I spit, feeling my anger rise. "I'm selfish? After you left me alone with my college debts? After you charged me rent to live in this house while you lived for free? After Mom and Dad gave you everything you asked for and gave me crumbs? No, Brandon. I owe you nothing. Not to you, and not to them." My father attempted to intercede with the dictatorial tone he used when he wanted to impose his will. "Lucas, calm down. We're your parents, and Brandon is your brother. You can't turn your back on your family. That money is a blessing, and you have to share it." "It's not a blessing for you," I remarked, interrupting him. "It's my blessing. I bought that lottery ticket. I won it. You used to make fun of me for buying tickets. Remember? You said I was a loser, that I was throwing my money away. Well, look who's laughing now." I did not provide them time to answer. I walked up to my room, got my backpack and began packing the necessities, clothes, my laptop, and some vital documents. I didn't need much. I'd always lived on the bare minimum, so it wasn't difficult to determine what to take. As I crammed my belongings into my backpack, I heard footsteps on the stairs. My mother's eyes were crimson, as if she were about to cry. "Lucas, please," she urged, stepping into the room without asking. "Don't do this. We're your family. You can't just leave like this. Let's talk. We can fix this." "There's nothing to fix," I said, without looking at her. "You made it clear who you are. It was always Brandon. Always. When I needed help with college, you turned your backs on me. When I wanted to start a business, you told me it wasn't worth it. But now that I have money, suddenly I'm important. No, Mom. It's over." I exited the room, descended the stairs, and moved through the living area without looking at Brandon or my father. I heard my mother yell at me from upstairs, claiming I was ungrateful and couldn't treat them the same way. Brandon also shouted something, but I didn't listen. I unlocked the front door and stepped outside, feeling the fresh air on my face. For the first time in a long time, I felt able to breathe. The days passed, and the wait for the lottery money seemed forever. Every morning, I checked my bank account, hoping to see a deposit. In the meantime, I settled into my new home. I purchased a mattress, a little table, and some basic items. I didn't need any more. For the first time, I felt like I had a space of my own, where no one could tell me what to do or how to live. Then one day, the lottery sent an email stating that the deposit had been processed. I checked my account, and there it was. A figure with more zeros than I'd ever seen. I glanced at the computer, feeling both relieved and excited. I'd done it. I was free. The first thing I did was repay my student debt. Seeing the balance at zero was like lifting a mountain off my shoulders. Then I bought several things I'd always wanted, like a good TV, a comfortable sofa, and a new laptop. Nothing fancy, simply things that made my life simpler. I did not want to draw notice. I did not want anyone to know that I was a millionaire. I had heard stories about lottery winners who lost everything because they overspent, and I was not going to be one of them. But my parents and Brandon refused to give up. A few days after I moved out, my mother called me. I did not respond, but she left a voicemail. "Lucas, please, we need to talk. Brandon's business is about to close. If we don't get money, it's going to go bankrupt. You have the means to help him. Don't turn your back on us." I listened to the message and then erased it. Then Brandon sent a message. "Bro, don't be like that. I know you're upset, but I'm your family. Help me. I'm begging you." I also overlooked that. A week later, my father contacted me. This time, I responded out of curiosity rather than a desire to converse. "Lucas," he added in a conciliatory tone. "I know things got out of hand, but you can't leave your brother out on the street. His business is all he has. If you don't help him, he's going to lose everything." "And what about me, Dad?" I asked. "What about everything I lost because of you? The years I worked to exhaustion. The times you humiliated me. Made me feel less." "No, Dad. Brandon had his chance and he blew it. Now it's his turn to face the consequences." "You're ungrateful," he exclaimed before hanging up. I was not surprised. It was the same old story. If I didn't do as they asked, I was an evil person. But this time, I didn't mind. I was done seeking their approval. I chose to discontinue communication with them. I blocked their phone numbers and removed their texts. It was not easy. A part of me still felt the burden of the shame they attempted to impose on me. However, I remembered their words and actions, and I knew I was doing the right thing. I owe them nothing. Today I go around my flat, gaze out the window, and experience something fresh. Freedom. It's not just about money. It's realizing that I don't need their approval, that I am enough. The wrath I felt has turned into tranquility. They gambled on Brandon and lost. I bet on myself, and won. There is no turning back.